Welcome back to Two Birds, One Mic. If you're still here, that means you're really fucking with us, so we appreciate it. All right, Goth, what you got going on for us today?
I am back in San Diego, so I am very glad to be here with you in person. We don't have to do this online.
Absolutely.
We had a very interesting sleepover conversation yesterday.
We cuddled.
How was that?
Got kind of freaky, but, not in the physical sense. It was great. It was a lot of different topics that we spoke about, ranging from... in its essence, I think it was just a good therapeutic conversation, which is exactly what we want this whole podcast to be for us. So, yeah.
Very much needed, too, honestly. And one thing I wanted to actually bring up that I kind of thought about yesterday. I was like, I feel like there is a benefit to sometimes just, like, putting your guard down when it comes to, like, very rigid structure, and I feel like these last couple of weeks, I've really been trying to sleep earlier and be like, okay, I'm trying to sleep at 10:30 every day, But I feel like sometimes it has returning utility when you miss out on some of the spontaneous things in life that really make life worth living. Like if yesterday night had been cut short, I feel like we would have really missed out on something that was beautiful and something that I'll definitely keep in mind. So I think that's something, as I'm getting older, I'm trying to learn how to like balance, being able to keep with the structure, but also allow for a little bit of spontaneity.
Absolutely. It makes me think about the quote, everything in moderation, even moderation, makes me, this is like really random, but, water bottles, like they're made with like a lot of extra space. So like when something freezes, like you got room for it, and like you gotta be like a water bottle sometimes, you gotta have extra space for the unexpected. And I really try and live my life that way, where I'm not too good with structure in general. Like I'm not a big structure guy, but it's necessary as I can see in my life. But I am someone who really, because the thing is, if you don't allow room for spontaneity, there's not going to be any spontaneity. Like you have to allow room for things to be able to happen without them to be planned. If you really want to live a life that has novelty to it, and you don't just want to live a life that is completely planned, and that's not what I want for my life. Preferably I'd have a little bit more spontaneity than not, because those are the moments that I end up really enjoying. So yeah, I really enjoyed how spontaneous that was. And and there's there's detrimental effects. Sure. I woke up hella late, I was hella tired, but the utility of that conversation superseded the detriment.
Yeah and I think something interesting is I feel like there is no creativity without spontaneity, and I feel like that's where the best creative outlets lie. It's just like being able to be in the moment and just like do what you feel or do what your gut just tells you is in its essence what creativity is as well. And I feel like that's one thing. I actually have this family friend who is extremely good at painting. She's really good at drawing, but one thing that she was telling me that she was having trouble with is like moving from drawing things that she's already seen to just like going with how she feels, and like being able to lose that like guard of like, oh my God, I have to, reach this excellence. And there's like that constant like need, and she was telling me how like it was a really big journey for her to just like let go of those things and be like, okay, I'm just going to one large brush stroke. It doesn't matter. It's wrong, and I feel like, I think a lot of artists also, I forgot the exact name for it, but when people were doing like cubism or were doing things to like just like abstract art. Yeah. Like it's just like kind of like a step away from like, what do I have to do with,
Yeah, that's one of the things that, makes Picasso so great. He, a lot of people look at Picasso and they're like, I could do that. I could, everything that he's doing, like, he's just making these really unsymmetrical, not linear lines. He's just kind of throwing random shapes and figures onto like a canvas, and people are calling this art. But the thing is, like, if you look at Picasso's older stuff, he was kind of like famous, like from a really young age. He got it all down. Like his portraits were like insane. Like he could do it all. Like if you really look at his old shit, like he was actually an incredible artist in the sense of like copying things from reality. But I think he recognized that wasn't something that was gonna make him great. And he pretty much took 3D reality and like condensed it into like the 1D piece of paper. And the reason why he's considered a genius is because like if somebody just randomly did that and they didn't have that background, that backing to do that, like it would just be like, it'd be a lot harder to tell whether or not they're actually good. But for him to be able to like create this intricate design and and these layers from his art, it's this huge jump that people who really appreciate art understand that it took an insane amount of creativity.
That makes sense. Interesting. I didn't think about that. And I feel like that makes art very contextual because like you can actually appreciate it. For example, like I think that's something I personally think like, and I think it's important what you bring up. So let's take the Mona Lisa, for example. I feel like everyone knows it's a hyped painting, but no one can actually tell why. I mean, some people, I guess, who really understand art probably could. But a lot of people, like that, like actual understanding of the beauty behind it is lost in translation.
Yeah.
And especially, I feel like that's super true with movies. Like in the 1950s or 1940s, I remember I'll see a movie and they're like, it was groundbreaking. Like this like new style of like film has never been seen before. Now you look at it, it's just like, it doesn't hit the same anymore, you know? But like being able to like, it's almost impossible because you can't really be like, I understand exactly what it was like then. But to be able to like appreciate the place of time in which these arts happen, I think gives a lot of beauty to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool too to know that like with the Mona Lisa, like that wasn't like a painting that like Leonardo da Vinci ever like was like showing to the public. Like they found that in his room after he died.
Wow.
And it became his most famous
That's
painting.
crazy.
Yeah, like it's not something he was wanted. Like it was his own personal painting.
That's insane.
And that's one of the contexts, you know, once you understand that, it gives it so much more like, oh, this is interesting. There's so much value, you know, and like it's really funny because I actually had in like a special Italian Renaissance like PhD whatever, like come to my art class and like break down the Mona Lisa one time, and you know, the way
mind blowing. It
was mind blowing, you know, and I think one of the things that makes it so valuable is the mystery behind it, and that's where the creativity comes in. It's like you can't just like, you know, look at, oh, he did this because of this, this, and this. Like the creativity jumps beyond the realm of like reason and like predictability and like rationality to a place where it's not something that you can necessarily make sense with in your own context of like your understanding in reality. So like, you know, one of the things she talked about is that it represents like the perfect form of like man and woman. And like, that's like what he was trying to represent, like the perfect human. Like this brings like man and woman together in like a lot of like unique ways. Some people say like, oh, it's like, you know, this like woman that he knew is like, you know, some lover, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of theories as to why it is what it is, but it's the mystery behind it that makes it so incredible. And
interesting.
To touch on your second point, I actually don't remember.
That's tough. It's tough. Like you even I feel like that's always very difficult. Like remember saying a bunch of things and then keeping that in the back of your mind and being able to touch on it.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say this one thing that we were at Goodwill and I picked up this book and I was reading about it, and what did it say? I'm trying to remember again. I actually forgot. You'll come back to my mind again. I also forgot.
Brains aren't working.
Yeah, it's late night things.
Late night things. Well, I think, you know, something that is a very interesting topic that we can add to is, you know, what we were talking about last night and, you know, kind of the struggles of defining what it means to be a man for yourself. And, you know, some of the things that we had from that conversation and really outlining how much your upbringing and how much the male figures in your life play a role in understanding what it means to be a man, and how developing that maybe one of the most important decisions for you moving forward in your life, and, you know, dealing with the hardships that life is going to give you, and having like a framework to work through.
Here's something interesting. I would consider myself a pretty open person. But when you brought that up, my first instinct was, do I really want to talk about this right now? But it got me even thinking, like, why is that the case? You know, and I feel like there is this, it's very hard to be vulnerable, especially when it comes to like your masculinity.
Oh, for sure.
As opposed to like anything else.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it's a funny topic because there's like the just, you know, identity politics with, you know, being a man and talking about what that encompasses, and, you know, trying your best to describe that while not being like uninclusive or like sexist in your speaking, and, you know, understand that you're probably going to bring up a topic like this and not know all the right things to say.
Yeah.
And, you know, taking that risk because it's something that's important to you, and that is, you know, vulnerability. And you might say something that's wrong and, you know, could offend somebody, and that's a potential, you know, but if that does happen, someone can, you know, tell you and you can learn from it and go from it. But you take that risk, you know, you can't censor yourself out of, you know, I mean, you should obviously take into account other people's feelings, but you should, at the same time, you should not censor yourself and not be able to speak freely about things that are important to you.
Yeah. And honestly, listening to people like Jordan Peterson, even Joe Rogan, I feel like are extremely inspirational in that they actually really spend a lot of their time tackling what does it even mean for them to feel like they are men, you know? And this is how I feel like they typically answer the problem, which I really like. They typically focus on what does it mean to live a fulfilling life? And what are the common traits between men and women that lead to what looks like a meaningful life to them, you know? And I feel like in that way, what you brought up about family being important and things like that, it's like, to me, the entire understanding of what it meant to be a man for me came clearly from my father and also my grandfather, right? That was it. So like their view of the world was primarily the main role of a man is to take care of the family, provide for the family, you know? And I feel like that's something that is now being slightly extended out. So, for example, my parents were very much on like the man should be able to bring the money to the house. But, you know, in different societies, there's different approaches to that. But I would say that even in the American society, there are common traits among all men that lead to fulfilling lives. And I kind of wanted to, you know, what are your thoughts on that?
Common traits that lead to fulfilling lives. Yeah, I mean, I think that it comes down to the question of, is the goal of understanding what it means to be a man for fulfillment? Or is it you kind of filling in this role that you kind of feel like you're supposed to fill in? It's hard to tell because, why do I want to establish what it means to be a man? Like I just said just on here, like, oh, you know, it's important for dealing with the things in your life. But is it? I don't know. I mean, it's tough. It's hard to tell how much of it is, you know, not something that I really chose. You know, it's something that just kind of I experienced and took on as truth, and how much of it I actually chose for myself. It's hard to tell, but I don't know. Yeah, maybe we could work through what is the value in even understanding that, you know, because it's not necessarily clear right off the bat if it's even necessary.
I'll posit this. I have recently been feeling like, and I've heard a lot of females actually express this opinion, that society would be better without any men, you know? And I feel like that is a common sentiment that is, it feels like we're born in a place where people make serious arguments about that. Like, the men are not needed, you know? And I feel like slowly as like, I don't understand how to say it, because I think there are certain things where, like, people shine at different things. You know what I mean? And there's I would never take the position that men are the only one who could do this, or women are the only ones who can do a certain action, you know? But I do think it is more likely to find, it's just all probability at that point. You know, like, is it more likely to find a person of this gender who is capable of doing this? Or is it more possible to find someone of another gender? You know? And in those ways, I think our society oftentimes tries to, like, make it seem that we are so equal that we don't actually have any strengths. Like, I feel like that's how they attack what it means to be equal, that we are the same. We are not actually different. Like, I feel like the understanding of that we can be different and still equal is not necessarily something that's talked about. Even when it comes to race and stuff, like colorblindedness, it's as if the whole thing doesn't even exist.
Right.
Like, it's okay to be different. Right. Like, that's not what people, like, I wish that wasn't what it came down to. Like, we are not the same, but that's okay, that's the difference, you know? It's not that I am better than you, but we are different.
Right.
You know, and I feel like, you know, growing up and trying to really be like, for so long, I was like, I'm trying to unlearn masculinity. It's toxic, that I wasn't actually able to, like, get in touch with it. I think masculinity channeled properly can be very, very useful, not only for yourself, but for society.
Right.
You know, but channeling it right is probably the hard part. Not, the goal shouldn't be to get rid of it completely, you know?
Right.
Because then I feel like you get stuck with all these men who have a lot of pent up energy, who have, like, and they just don't know where to take it, where to use it.
Yeah. I mean, it's not clear that it's something that we even can necessarily get rid of. You know, I think most people would argue that there are, you know, it's difficult, like, when we talk about masculinity, because I've heard people talk about, you know, masculine and feminine energy. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I do know that, you know, a lot of people talk about different people having combinations of both. a man can have more feminine energy, a woman can have more masculine energy, and there's a combination of all those things happening at the same time. And so maybe both of those energies, if they do exist, are things which we cannot separate from ourselves. And maybe being a man, and I mean, maybe on both sides, it's important to know how to channel both of those energies, which is kind of interesting to think about. And it seems like, because of the, because when I do think about masculine, I think each side has like positives and negatives to it. Feminine energy has positive and negatives to it. Masculine have positive and negatives to them. But obviously, because of the place in history in which men have the position that they've held, their toxic traits have had a lot more influence and power. And so it's become demonized in a different way because, the toxic traits of a woman, when women's feelings and thoughts and ideas and positions weren't even, considered valid until recently, it didn't really matter. But the toxic traits of a man, being more prone towards aggression, being more prone towards these things, because of the influence that men have had, it has had a lot more disastrous consequences. And I think that what you're saying is that men should, like, it seems like people's positions have been like, okay, because of the disaster that this has led to, like, it's something we should get rid of. But it's not necessarily clear we can. Is it something that we need to get rid of? Like, is it trying to get rid of the yang and the yin? Or are they just two forces that need to be balanced out and mastered and channeled in a proper way? And I do think that masculinity, like you said, needs to be mastered. And I think that to do that, you have to understand it at its fullest extent. And to do that, I think a lot of that comes from you understanding yourself and you understanding your fellow men and you understanding the past, that the dark side of what that could be. And, the dark side of not knowing yourself and not being able to tame it. How a lot of men do become, very lustful or, a hypersexual or, aggressive or egotistic or filled with anger or, reason why, have the highest suicide rates. Like, these types of things of not understanding these forces that play in our lives is something that ultimately, like you said, I think leads to more detriment than benefit. And so to completely cast it away would just be to ignore something that is potentially integral to our being.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And one of our friends was actually just showing me this Instagram page of just like nature, right? But when you think about a nature page, just guess what you probably see on it. It's like, oh, like nice trees, beautiful animals. Oh, it's such a cute polar bear. This Instagram page just kind of took the complete different opposite. It was just like, here are the realities of what nature also looks like, which is these animals just absolutely killing each other. There is death. There are these animals who are like falling off these mountains. And it's just like, this is also another part of nature, and one thing that it really made me realize is, damn, we've come a long way to where I don't have to actually worry about my survival ever. It's not like I'm constantly like, I could die today, I could die today, I could die today, because we have actually, instilled these responsibilities and with gender roles or whatnot, however we got to where we are today. Aggressiveness is not a negative trait to be looked at. There are many positive use cases of it. And we were talking about yesterday about that feeling of feeling safe around your dad, or that feeling of feeling safe around like men in your life, where like, it's not because they're not aggressive that you feel safe around them. It's typically like characteristics of like, you feel like they're capable of harming someone if they chose to, which makes you feel safe around those people.
Right.
And that's something that helps. It helps to lead like a life where you feel, safe.
Right. And I think that, that's obviously a very fine line, right? Because aggression, like we're talking about in the sense, it's channeled correctly, right? Like if your dad is aggressive, typically that's not something that is going to make you feel safe, right? Like it's going to make you feel the opposite.
Towards you, yeah.
But that's just in a general sense, but if he's aggressive in, being a good parent, if he's aggressive in, being successful in his business, if he's aggressive in, if the aggression is a tool that is being used for something that's a good outcome, then that's when aggressiveness becomes something that's beneficial. The anger can be a powerful tool if it is channeled correctly, right? Like if you're just ultimately it's passion, it's a fire, it's things that are going to push you towards pushing limits, and like overcoming things. And I think that I had this epiphany actually recently about anger that is actually really funny. And, something I wondered how many men struggle with, but I was having this issue where I would find myself getting angry like a lot casually throughout the day. And I've dealt with anger problems for a while. As a kid I had them. And times in which I felt that anger rise would be when I was like at a stoplight and I would like make eye contact with like another dude. I would get like really angry. Or like when I felt like some dude was like raising his voice at me or like stepping up to me, I would get really, really angry. And I had this one week where I was like so fucking angry the entire week and I could not figure out what was going on. So I really sat with myself and I had this situation where I stopped at a red light and this man stared at me and I stared at him back. And, there's this whole ego battle of like,
that's romantic.
of who's going to stare away first. And I got really angry in that moment. I was like, man, what am I really feeling? And I realized that what I was feeling wasn't just anger, it was anxiety. And that my anger was actually a tool I was using to cope with my anxiety. So in these situations where I'd made eye contact with these men, or, a man would step up to me in whatever way, the feeling that would initially come before the anger that I didn't catch was anxiety of me actually not wanting to make eye contact with this dude. Anxiety of like me like wanting to step down when this, person steps up to me, or like me not wanting to like get aggressive with this person. But because I felt like that anxiety would ultimately hurt my pride and hurt my self-esteem and my identity as a man, I would use anger as a tool to overcome that. Because when I'm angry, I don't feel anxious. Like I don't feel shit when I'm angry. All I feel is that anger. It's actually a tool that I can use to overcome most of my feelings because it's so overwhelming. So if I can feel angry, I don't feel the anxiety. I just feel the anger. Like in my body, when there's, two physiological states aren't going to happen at the same time. Only one's going to happen, So like I have a physiological state of anxiety, but it's going to become like diminished in the face of the physiological response to anger. And I was using that as a tool to deal with my anxiety because I was actually scared. And it just made me realize that, or maybe wonder how many men out there actually use anger as a tool to deal with their fear, because it makes them feel tough and it makes them become unconscious and unreasonable enough to do things that they feel like they're supposed to do.
Interesting.
Yeah. And now in these situations, it's crazy because when I feel that anger come up, I just tell myself like, hey, you're not really angry. You're just scared. You're anxious. I'm like, that's okay. And it made me realize that is a sense in which anger is not very beneficial, but in those situations it was, because it allowed me to overcome my anxiety, allowed me to be this man that I felt like I was supposed to be. It was a tool that I was unconsciously manipulating.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I think, even when we were talking about yesterday, like telling people in your life that like, hey, like I'm actually afraid of this really like kind of takes the fear and all these other emotions that come with it away.
Yeah.
And I think like that's actually really big and beneficial in friendships where like you're able to actually share that.
Right.
Because I think a lot of it comes, people are even more tempted and tend to get angry because what you said, there's like an extra layer of like, I need to use this to like act as if I'm not afraid of anything.
Right.
And we were actually talking about it yesterday where it was like in that J. Cole song where he was talking about, feeling afraid, getting into fights because of that.
Yeah, he talked, not the exact line, but the line was talking about, how growing up as a kid, he constantly was scared of getting punched in the face and he was constantly scared of getting shot and dying. And that, he was really good at putting up a facade of being tough all the time. So it didn't really come to that. But, at times when it did, he had to come face to face with that fear. And how, I imagine him spitting that is being very vulnerable, especially being in hip hop where everyone has to act hard. And I just wonder, because, it really resonated with me that that's how I feel a lot of times. And it just made me wonder how many other people feel like that, but really just can't admit it.
Yeah. And being able to, it really it humbles and it makes me, be a lot more empathetic when I realize like, dang, maybe everyone is afraid, it's sometimes so easy to look at somebody else and be like, oh, they're not afraid of anything, and I feel like even between friendships, like a lot of times I view people in my life and I'm like, they don't look like they're afraid of anything, you know, but like there's a difference between letting your fear control you and there's a difference between not feeling it at all.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think some people may just be better at just experiencing the feeling of fear and then just not letting it control them or stop them.
Right.
You know, and I think
definitionally that's courage, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not very, you know, if somebody doesn't feel fear at all, they're just a psychopath. You know? There's nothing very noble about that. You know, it's like arguably the person who feels the most fear and overcomes the most fear is the bravest person.
Yeah.
You know, you have to literally feel that fear to be brave in the first place.
Exactly. And that creates a much more empathetic relationship with fear. It's not something that you have to like push away, but it becomes an opportunity for you to now be brave. You know, and I think I personally now really love, as long as my life is not in danger, I like experiences where I feel like I'm afraid and then doing it, because sometimes it's just so hard, but like the reward that comes at the other side is like nothing else.
I mean, it's a compass, you know, fear is really like a compass. Like most people look at it like a red light, but it's actually a green light. You know, it's telling you, if you want to grow, one of the best ways to do that is look at what you're scared of. Yeah. In a rational sense, you know, don't fucking go and, you know, get bit by a rattlesnake. I mean, maybe you should.
But it's tough. It does to get tough.
And of course you can rationalize. That's the problem with fear. Like you can rationalize a lot of shit.
Yeah.
But, you know, there are levels to it where it's like, hey, you know, if I go out and, you know, I'm really scared of public speaking. And if you go out and, you know, at a mall and just start like talking to people, like
that's a great
nothing's gonna happen. Like there's nothing's gonna happen. You know, like truly, like you can rationalize that, like, oh, I might get made fun of, like yada yada. But like, if your life is not in imminent danger from you doing something, then that fear is a compass and a directive for you to go and figure out what resistance you have towards reality and what areas you can grow and shine in. Because we don't look at how things connect. You know, that situation where you maybe go to a public place and start talking to people might be the reason why you land your dream job and now can speak in front of millions of people, you know?
Yeah. And what you said earlier too, like really questioning like what about that situation rises that fear in you. And a lot of times, at least in my experience, I could say that it comes from a place of like not being assured in myself, like not believing that I can do something, you know? And I feel like when you come face to face with that, then you ask yourself, okay, so why do I feel that then? And then you realize it's a simple answer. I just don't actually try hard enough in that. You know, if it's like, I don't want to go sing karaoke, let's just say that's my fear. Really question, it's like, I don't want to actually face the rejection that someone might give me if I don't sing well.
Right.
Well, then if I look at that, then I'm like, there's a simple way to get over that. Just practice, you know? And it's like, I think with fighting or anything, it's like, once you get to the point of like, I'm afraid because I don't think I'm good enough at this, then it's easy because all you have to do is just get up and go practice it. And then whether you are quote unquote good at it or not, you'll still feel good because you're better than you were a month ago or a week ago.
Right. You'll feel that sense of growth, you know. That's a really good point. And I think that for me, you know, I feel a lot of fear towards like random shit, and a lot of it, like I imagine most people's, is centered around other people. You know, our sense of fear is so intertwined with like our social connections. Like it sucks. And for example, like I really like to dance, right? But like I'm the kind of guy where like if I get, and I you know, I've been dancing for a minute. I'm definitely not the best at it, but I can dance, you know. But if I get thrown in the middle of the group, like I'm not gonna dance. I'll literally just walk out. Like, and I've never done that. Like I'm not comfortable doing that at all. And the reason is because I'm completely scared of getting judged, right? And the truth be told, in doing that, it's like I'm not living my life. You know, I'm living what I believe other people will allow me to do, you know, through their judgment. Like the judgment is a, you know, prison in some sense. And, you know, what will they allow me to and not do? What will my brain tell me that this is okay and this isn't okay? Because judgment becomes something that, fear of judgment, you know, it's, you don't even know, like you literally have no clue whether or not those people are judging you, but like your perception of them judging you, that you've created that in your own head is such a block.
Yeah, definitely. And we were actually like, I was at the club a week ago and my friend was actually telling me, we were just talking about it and we were like, you never actually know what someone thinks about you. Yeah. So like, you know, in that situation that you just say, because I feel like I'm the exact same way, there's two things. One, it's like, what that shows to me when I have that fear of like, oh, if I mess up, like these people aren't going to think I'm nice at dancing. Yeah. What that shows is that in my head, I want people to think that I'm a good dancer. First, there's a beautiful question there itself.
Or at least you don't want people to think you're a bad dancer.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like, regardless, like in that question itself, I think there's a lot of wisdom in like really asking like, what about this trait is it that I want other people to view me as that trait, and then on top of that, understanding that like, even if other people are judging you, like you actually have no metric of what their thoughts are on that.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Right.
it's not based on facial expression. It's really tough to actually decipher, especially when it's a large crowd. So what my friend was saying is, you might as well, especially when you confidence actually helps you accomplish what you're trying to do, you might as well just completely have the opposite approach and be like, they all love me.
Because either the funny part about that is you're so right. Like either way, you're lying to yourself.
Yeah.
You know, like you don't really know. You're either lying to yourself about the fact that people think you're bad, or you're lying to yourself about the fact that people think you're good.
Yeah.
And people choose the negative one.
Yeah.
And for some reason, there's this fallacy that that's more true.
Yeah.
But it's not. You know, it equally could be true. So it's like, why not pick the one that is going to be most beneficial
to you?
And it's hard because the truth is like, one allows the situation and one doesn't. Like if I don't dance, then it doesn't create the situation where I can ever hear that I'm a bad dancer. But if I do dance, then that situation is created. You know, and that's the hard part. Like so many people shut themselves down just so they don't have to deal with the possibility of other people shutting them down.
Yes.
That is for me the really difficult part.
Yes.
When it comes to those types of things.
Definitely.
But at the end of the day, it's like, you know, somebody does think you're a bad dancer. It's just kind of like and what?
Yeah.
Like someone might make a joke at you. It's like, you'll be okay.
There's really not much.
Yeah, someone can make a joke at you. That's literally all they can do. And
yeah.
Just like, okay, yeah, I'm terrible.
Yeah.
Nice, cool.
And especially when you start moving around and you start just getting out of your city or your bubble, you realize like at any point, even if you made the worst mess up and your whole city makes fun of you, or even your whole country makes fun of you,
Right.
You just hop over to a new country, nobody will know who you are.
Yeah. I mean, look at people get canceled. It's like, give it a year and like, they're just kind of back to doing what they're doing. You know, like you might see a couple comments on their page about it, but like, you know, like
start over.
People really do forget shit. You're totally, and it's hard to remember that shit is so temporary.
Yeah.
Like, you know, what you do one night is not going to be like plastered on your face for the rest of your life.
And so going into Vegas this weekend, I'm going to ask you something. And I'll answer this after you. I want to think, what are maybe one or two things that you are afraid of, but that you're going to, you know.
I'm going to get in a fight.
No. And for the sake of exploring your fears, are going to do.
Well, in talking through this podcast, I mean, it seems like I gotta dance in the circle. You know? I gotta, and not just like, but here's the rub. Dance in the circle, because this is what I will do. I will dance in the circle sometimes, but I won't like dance.
Yeah, like full send.
I won't dance. I won't full send it because I'm like, oh, like if I kind of, if I don't do a good job, and then everyone thinks I did a bad job, it's like, yeah, because I didn't try. But it's like go in the circle and like fully try.
Yeah,
that is definitely something I'm very.
That's an important distinction. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yes. And
So how do you what does that look like to you? What does full send look like to you? Not just for dancing, but just mentally for anything you do. What does a full send look like?
Full send, I think in that situation, I think I can generalize, is doing this for you and out of your enjoyment instead of doing it for anybody else.
Being so present.
Yeah. Just being literally like, flow. Just flow. Like, look, I'm literally just going to do, because the problem I have is like, I have anxiety, right? So like, the funny part is like, since I think I'm bad, I'll like fuck up dancing. Like, because my anxiety is like, oh, like, it's like blocking my brain from being able to like make these connections. And like, because I'm like, I'll like do a move and then I'll like look at somebody's eye and they're like slightly like frown from like probably someone across from them. And I'll interpret that as like, oh, this person like thought that move was whack, like my brain will start creating all these like webs as to like why I'm doing a shitty job, and it'll just like, So like getting in there and just like not giving a fuck, like literally being like, I mean, honestly, going in there and being like, this might be fucking terrible, but like, I'm just gonna do it anyways. And, I want to bring up something that you told me one time that like really impacted me. And, we were just talking about singing, and you were talking about how like, who the fuck said that like the metric about whether or not you should like sing in front of other people is that like you're supposed to be good at it. Like that, like who decided that was like a thing? Like, why is it that like the only time you can sing is like if you're good? Like you should just be able to sing because like you genuinely enjoy singing. Like if you have a terrible voice but like you love singing, like that doesn't mean that like you're not supposed to be singing in situations. And I was just like, that's so facts, like I'm like scared to like sing around other people because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna sound shitty. But it's like, who decided that that's like the reason people should and shouldn't be singing around each other? Be like to sound good. Like, as we were talking about earlier, it's like that is just such fake shit. It's like you only get to bring like the good things around. Like, I love singing, you know, and like whether or not I'm terrible at it, like that really gave me a situation where I was like, oh, fuck it. Like, and it's funny enough because I don't think I'm a good singer. So like, you know, talking about things earlier, like I'm down to sing in front of other people and like sound terrible. I'm like, I know. But the dancing, that's different because like I do think I'm nice with it. So like I'm scared of getting judged in that situation.
I see.
Right
See that, yeah. But very
you gotta care about it.
Points. Yeah. And you have to, Interesting. Yeah, and I would say for me, I think one thing that I have shied away from recently, and I think it really came to the forefront this weekend. I was talking to this girl. She was cool at the tattoo place. And I was just like, you know, I basically created a bunch of justifications of like, oh, why? Don't ask for a number. You know why? Like, you're not going to, do you want to be your friend? Like, why bother? You're not even going to go out there, X, Y, and Z, you know? But really what it is I don't want to get rejected. Right. You know, I don't want to face that, right? Because I knew that if I got rejected, I would feel like, oh, something's wrong with me. As opposed to maybe this girl just doesn't want to go out with me. Yeah. Maybe she's busy. Maybe, you know, there's X, Y, and Z reasons why she didn't give me a number. So one thing I want to do is, and not specifically in Vegas, because that's just not the place where, you know.
Oh, it's not the place for what?
That's true. I mean, yeah, why not? Like, just why not?
I mean, it's the place.
Yeah, like, why not? Why not? Why not?
It's the place for both of these things.
So even if I don't actually use a number to, like, pursue anything after, just to get over the fear, I should totally just go and ask.
1 million.
You know?
Yeah.
So I even told John, I was like, I'm going to ask for at least 3 girls' numbers.
3?
You know, 3. Like, I'm going to just do it. Why not?
Right.
You know?
Yeah,
even if I get rejected all 3, like, at least I know I tried, you know? But and the hard part will be, even if I get rejected, how do you then mentally overcome that and not really take it to be your fault? You know, even in that dancing situation, even if everyone says you're bad, to have the mental tenacity to be like, okay, that doesn't faze me.
Right.
I'm going to still do it again.
Right.
And again, and again, and again.
And I think the biggest part is, you know, not tying that with your like worth. You know, that's just the biggest thing. It's like, you're now a bad dancer does not have anything to do with like the type of person you are, how valuable you are, or honestly, like we were just talking about, whether or not you should dance again. Like, that has nothing to do with that. You know, like truly, like it's not, are you dancing to like please other people? Like if that's the case, like, I mean, I'm sure they're having pleasure from you dancing badly as well. You know, like it's funny. Like, why are you dancing? Like, you know, then I think that's really the bigger question that you need to be asking yourself. And it's because like, oh, I really like enjoy when my body moves this way. Like it feels good. Like, hey, that's all you need. You know, that's really it. That is the goal of what you're doing, and you succeeded. Yeah. Everything else is just irrelevant.
That's true. That's beautiful. So like, if my goal in that situation is to get over my fear, that's my goal. I want to attack my fear.
You've succeeded.
Then what the outcome is, it doesn't matter.
It has nothing to do with the outcome.
Yeah.
It has to do with literally what your goal was and your intention was.
Interesting.
That's success. Like working on that intention.
Yeah. So it's really just like, you know, a little mental shift there. Yeah. And then like what the goal is, what the goal point is. Exactly. You know? If the goal point is in the full send, then if you full send, then the other stuff is just irrelevant.
And everything else that comes out is like, you know, it's
and the crazy thing is it happens. I feel like it happens to be that the more you full send and the more often you do it, over time people do actually end up starting to like what
the outcome is better.
Yeah,
everything like, you know? If you full send versus half send, like you're gonna dance better. If you full send for a number versus that, like the outcome is just gonna be better. You know, it's like you just create your own reality of like shit failing versus like, you know, I think a really good example that, you know, is my roommate, like arguably one of the most confident people I know, and like half the shit he's confident about, like he probably shouldn't be, like I don't even know, but like he every time he does something, he does such a good job at it because he is so confident, you know, or like, and then if he fails, like it does not deter his like next ability to like do something. And like it, like I really thought about him and thought about that, like your ratio to success is just gonna be so much higher because you're just like giving yourself every opportunity you can because you fully believe you can do it.
Hell yeah. So I'm excited for this weekend to actually, you know, use as an opportunity to try these things, get ourselves out of our comfort zone and put ourselves in situations where we can fail.
Absolutely.
You know, and in that way, you know, we can maybe come back and share our failures.
Talk about it. Yep. Well, you know, this episode has taken a lot of interesting routes and twists and turns, but you know, that's the nature of two birds, one mic. You know, you never know what it's going to be. It might be unpredictable. It might be predictable. But like we were talking about earlier, that is what creativity is. And this is a creative process. It's not something that's supposed to be completely understandable and predictable. It's something that comes up in the moment. And our podcast is something that we give opportunities for us to, you know, be intuitive and spark things in the moment. So thanks for rocking with us. And yeah, we'll see if we're still alive after this weekend.
All right. See y'all next time.